and welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? Hope you're doing well, taking a little bit of time for yourself, and welcome to today's program. Today, we're going to be discussing all things Roth. We're going to be discussing the reasons for Roth. And you might think that you know a lot of things about Roth, and maybe you do. There's an absolute mound of information that is available everywhere, it seems, for those that are curious about the Roth. But today, maybe we're going to be shedding a little bit of light, shall we say, on the Roth, and maybe bringing you up to date as to some new numbers that are going to be relevant to you. And in many respects, this might challenge you to do a little bit more. Maybe it'll challenge you to think more seriously at adding money to the Roth or doing Roth conversions, or maybe just simply starting a Roth account. Now, as with all things retirement, there's pros, there's cons. I want you to understand, as a financial advisor, I don't know your personal unique set of circumstances. A Roth might be right for you. A Roth might not be right. So some of these things we're going to be talking in generality. Some of these things I may be giving you the impression that you need to do thus and such. But I want you to understand, this is a very personal decision. This is something that whether a Roth is good for you, whether employer or personal, that can depend upon a lot of different situations, a lot of different details, how much you're making, how close to retirement you are, so on and so forth. And though we're going to try to cover as many of the minute and very important details of Roth, it is always in your best interest to personally seek out the advice of a professional. Talk to a fiduciary, a financial advisor. Speak with your CPA or your tax preparer and get their take on it. Now, just because they have an opinion that may be for or against what you're researching and thinking about doing doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong, but it is always important for you to do your own due diligence. Now, as we get into this, why are we talking about Roth conversion? Shouldn't that have been something that we were doing, 9, 10, 11 months ago? Well, technically, yes. The sooner we can do something for ourselves that has benefit, well, the more benefit we see, typically. But, as fall is starting to come to a close, and we all know what happens after that, we get busy with the holidays, then it's the end of the year. Well, my mind is already into 2026. I am already thinking about taxes. I'm already thinking about the things that I need to do today to finish up the year strong, to be able to have my ducks in a row, to make certain that I'm not paying any more in tax than necessary, but also making certain that I'm taking every advantage possible of things like tax deductions and certain tax provisions. If I don't do that, I feel like I'm paying the proverbial dumb tax. That means that I'm maybe paying more in tax than what I need. So as we get into this, again, this is something that may be right for you, and then again, it may not be, but you want to check it out for yourself. Now, when we look at everything that has taken place in 2025, we know that we had the elections late in 2024, and we know that the market was pretty optimistic after that landslide election with President Trump. But then we know that the beginning of the year, really the first 6 months of 2025 they were pretty difficult. We had the market kind of being let down by the Federal Reserve, where the Federal Reserve had kind of given indication that they were going to be cutting interest rates in 2025, and then they just simply didn't. And the market really didn't appreciate that. That was kind of like the kid in the cereal aisle that, he wanted the Tutti Fruttis and mom said no. And so he throws himself on the floor and he starts kicking and screaming, throwing a bit of a temper tantrum. And the market very much can act like a child. Now, with that being said, But then we have to think about the political things, the economic things that occurred shortly thereafter, where we have Liberation Day and we have the president coming out basically saying, listen, we're going to take every country under the sun. We're going to slap them with 1,000% tariff and they're going to like it. And well, the market just simply did not know what to make of that. The market couldn't delineate between whether or not he was simply trying to create shock and awe so that he could wake up countries and bring them to the negotiations table, or if he was absolutely being serious. And of course, even though you and I try to take things in the spirit in which they are relayed, it seems like oftentimes the stock market doesn't do that. The stock market will take things very literally. And that's a problem because the market is thinking, oh my goodness, is this the end of the world as we know it? What does this look like? Is this going to end, all profits for all companies, for all countries? And are we going to fall out of favor? Is no one going to trade with us? There was just an abundance of questions. There was very little information. Well, over the course of time, as we know, things finally gradually became more clear. There was a lot of negotiating that was taking place, and countries, they were able to come to the table and get a much better deal than what originally they were being strapped with. And the market has grown very resilient. The market has come up. When you look at the Dow Jones is up nearly 9% for the year. When you look at the S&P 500, the S&P is up by 13% or thereabouts. When you look at the NASDAQ obviously very tech heavy. And of course, everything with regards to artificial intelligence and technology and software and microchips, all of those things have been doing extremely well in 2025. And so the NASDAQ is up 16.5+%. So why do we care about the indexes? Why do we care about all of this that's been taking place? Well, we know that not only have we had a lot of changes take place with regards to the landscape economically for the United States of America because of all the tariffs, we also know at the same time there was passage of what was called the Big Beautiful Tax Bill. Now with that's where we're really going to kind of hinge a lot of our decision making as an investor, as an up and coming retiree, or maybe even if we are retired, our decision making. Because if we can receive certain, say, tax advantages between now and say a few years from now, we want to be able to take advantage of that to the best of our ability. So let's begin with some of the basics. When we think about a Roth account is something where we are depositing generally after-tax money into this account. So we're getting no tax deduction for putting money into the Roth. And then as that money that we have deposited grows, as it compounds, whether that's through capital appreciation, meaning the asset that we own has increased in value, or the instrument that we have deposited money into has earned us interest or it has earned us dividends, the gains, whether that's appreciation, interest, and or dividends, is totally tax-free to us. Now, of course, we want to be thinking long-term, and so does the IRS. The IRS expects that if we're going to start a Roth, it doesn't matter if we are 10 years of age, it doesn't matter if we are 90 years of age. When we start any kind of a Roth IRA for ourselves, we know that there is going to be two sets of restrictions on touching the money. The first set of restrictions that we want to be very, very careful of is going to be the 59.5 rule. Now, of course, if you're 90 years of age and you're just starting a Roth IRA, well, you don't have to worry about this one because you're far and away past that age. But for most people that are just starting out, the age 59.5 can seem a very, very long ways away. So what is significant about 59.5? Well, the significance of 59.5 is that if I go ahead and I deposit money into this Roth, and this Roth money is growing, it's compounding, and I don't have to pay any taxes on the gains. Well, if I take this set of gains out of this Roth and I'm not yet 59 and a half, the government says, hey, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, so we're not going to hold up ours. We're going to take those gains, which would ordinarily be tax-free to you if you were over the age of 59 and a half, and we are going to tax you on those gains, just like normal, just as though it was a TOD account, a past post-tax account, just like it was earning interest or dividends or capital gains in a after-tax brokerage account or CD or savings account. Now, the 5-year rule has to deal with also this idea that if I deposit money into a Roth, I don't want to touch the gains within that first 5-year period of time as well. So it can kind of seem a little confusing. So Matthew, which is it? Is it 59 and a half or is it 5 years? And the answer is, well, it's both. Let's say that I was 61 years of age and I decided to put money into a Roth. It didn't matter why. I either put it in just as a contribution or maybe I converted some money into Roth. Well, if I'm 61, I don't want to be touching any of the gains of that Roth account until I am 66 years of age. So even though I'm beyond the age of 59 and a half, I simply still have to be paying attention to the 5-year rule. Now, we also want to keep in mind that there is certain restrictions as it pertains to contributing to a Roth. When you think about a Roth IRA, you have to realize that it's kind of broken into 2 different age groups. Those that are under the age of 50, so 0 to 49, and those that are 50 and over. When you're under the age of 50, you can contribute up to, based upon today's rules of 2025, if you're up to the age of 50, but you're not 50 and over, you can contribute $7,000 per year into an individual Roth IRA. Now, keep in mind, you have to have up to $7,000 worth of income. This is somewhat challenging, especially for parents who have tried to start some sort of a Roth for their child because they've heard that it's a good idea. But in order to make a contribution for a child, you need to have, or for any person, for yourself, you need to have earned income. That's not passive income, that's earned income. So remember, if you're younger than the age of 50, $7,000 is going to be the number. Now, what if you happen to be over the age of 50? Well, if you're 50 and over, now you can contribute up to a total of $8,000. Now, we're going to start getting into some more technical details, especially as it pertains to employer retirement accounts, 401ks and 403bs in the Roth. But this is something that's extremely important. So I really encourage you, we're going to come up to our first break. Sit tight. We'll be right back where we're going to start seeing some numbers that are absolutely mind-blowing as to how much you can contribute to a Roth and do it totally tax-free. Sit tight. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to today's program. Today, we're discussing the all-elusive, sometimes very confusing Roth IRA. Now, quite honestly, a Roth IRA is not very confusing, but it can be because there always seems to be rules and regulations and restrictions and limitations and things that we need to abide by. But let's kind of go back and take a little bit of a recap. A Roth IRA or a Roth dollar is kind of an exceptional area to put money into invest it. Now, granted, when I put money into a Roth, whether it's in an individual Roth account or if it's, say, a part of my employer retirement package, the reality is I'm not going to get a tax deduction for contributing that dollar. But what I'm giving up today, I'm actually getting a benefit tomorrow by having the gains that money has earned and accumulated over the course of time. I'm getting those gains tax-free when I go to take them out. As long as I abide by the 59 and a half rule. In other words, I'm over the age of 59 and a half when I do my withdrawal, and I've had that Roth for more than 5 years. Okay. Now, granted, again, as a disclaimer, I'm not a CPA, so this is up to you to explore this, work with a fiduciary, figure out if Roth is the right way for you. Talk to a CPA, see if it's something that you want to do. But as we get into this, we kind of left off in the sense that when you look at where the market has been and where the market is today, when you have the NASDAQ up 16.5%, you got the S&P 500 up nearly 13%, you got the Dow Jones up nearly 9%. Man, wouldn't it be nice if all of those gains that have taken place over the course of the year would be totally tax-free? Now, granted, you have to remember that if you want to actually realize a gain, you have to sell the asset that has appreciated. But the point here is this: if we think about everything that's happened just recently in the news, with China starting to revolt a little bit with regards to the tariffs, and the market pulling back just a little bit, taking a bit of a breather, this reminds me that we have not only an opportunity to make a contribution into our Roth accounts before the end of the year, and we're able to buy things today that and those items those shares might be less expensive today than they are, say, 6 or 8 or 10 months from now. But more importantly, we have the opportunity, when we look at the big, beautiful bill, to potentially take and add more money into our Roth accounts. And it doesn't really matter that we're not getting a tax deduction for it, because depending upon how old you are, you may be getting a much bigger, fatter tax deduction anyway on your taxes due to the big, beautiful bill. Additionally, we want to be thinking about things called Roth conversions. Now, here's something that maybe you knew or you didn't know, but it's a good refresher. It's a good reminder that if you're going to do a Roth conversion, you have to do the Roth conversion before the end of the year. And the bad news is this: there is a tremendous degree of urgency. That urgency is because most financial custodians, when you think about a custodian, think names like Vanguard or Fidelity or Merrill Lynch. Those custodians, well, they have a lot of busyness that's taking place before the end of the year. And so oftentimes they will put a restriction on you and me and everyone else, saying, if you want to process a Roth conversion, that Roth conversion has to be submitted to us by a certain date. And that date could be something as early as, say, November 1st. And that's because they're absolutely inundated with procrastinators. People, it could be the financial advisor that's procrastinating on this. It could be the actual account holder that is procrastinating. But the reality is that they can't guarantee, they can't promise you that just because you want the Roth conversion, they're going to be able to get it done before the end of the year. And that's why they put the restriction in. So even though we know we're not to the end of the year just yet, my friends, this is the time in which you need to start looking at, is a Roth conversion appropriate? Now, I want you to think about taxes, and I want you to think about the standard deduction that I've been talking about, and just kind of mentally maybe make note of this or write it down if you need to. When we think about taxes and those that file taxes, I'm going to just basically pick on two of the most popular groups, and that's going to be the single tax filers and the joint filers. When we think about a person who is under the age of 65 and they're filing as a single, their standard deduction for 2025 is going to be $15,750. Now, if they're over the age of 65, they're going to get additional tax deductions added to their standard deduction. Now they're going to have as much as $23,750 as a deduction. Now, of course, there is a provision, and this is true as long as that single tax filer doesn't have modified adjustment gross income of more than $75,000. Now let's talk about the joint filer. The joint filer, if they're under age 65, they can deduct, using their standard deduction, $31,500. But I want you to catch this now. Catch this. This is big. This is huge. If you are joint filing and you're over the age of 65, not only do you get your standard deduction, not only do you get an extra $1,600 per person who is over the age of 65, but then you get an extra $12,000 of deduction. That means that in 2025, if you're over the age of 65, you and a spouse, you may have a standard deduction of upwards of $46,700. Now, why is that so significant? Why is that so important to you? Well, that is so significant because here's the thing. If you and I agree that in the future, down the road, we may be facing higher taxes, well, the reality is that we want to do what we can today to shrink the bucket of pre-tax money that we have, whether it's in a 401k, a 403b, or just a traditional IRA. We want to be working, if we can, if it makes sense, if we have the money to do it, to roll that money little by little, chipping away at it, moving it into the Roth. And why is that? Well, because that's going to give us access not only to capital, to principal that's totally tax-free, not only to gains that are tax-free, interest that's tax-free, dividends that's tax-free. It's going to give you the peace of mind to know that if you die, it's going to go to a spouse and it's going to be tax-free to that spouse. And that's going to be very handy, especially when you go from being a joint filer now to a single filer. And so many men tend to forget about this facet of life and relationships and money. But now think about legacy. Think about your kids and your grandkids. How enjoyable is it going to be when most of my clients are telling me that their kids are doing better than they were? Okay. And so as a result, that legacy is going to be tax-free. That means that if you pass away and they receive those dollars, if they've got a good paying job, they're making good income, good money, well, they're in a position where they're not going to be giving most of that legacy away to the IRS. Now, as with all things, there are pros and there are cons. Do you remember just a moment ago that we talked about this 5-year rule? If I deposit money into a Roth, I don't want to touch the gains for 5 years. Well, the reality is that rule also applies to Roth conversions. And so if you happen to be an investor, you happen to be maybe a up-and-coming retiree, maybe you are retired. This is especially true for those of you that are retired. You're in a position where you really don't want to take the bait of doing a large Roth conversion or doing all Roth conversion. You may want to question whether you need to do any Roth conversion or not. Because if you don't have a lot of resources, if you're in a position where maybe you need every red cent of interest and dividends being produced off from your principal so you can have as much income as is possible. Remember, if you Roth convert a portion of that money into Roth, you can't touch that now. That's now principal that's producing interest and dividends. Yes, it may be appreciating. Yes, but you can't access it now without a penalty, not without paying taxes on it like normal. And so as a result, we really want to be very, very thoughtful about what we're doing. Now, here's the big news. When you think about the provision of being able to save money on a pre-tax basis, it's kind of nice. We know that we pay less tax, but it's also one of the biggest lies that the IRS has ever gotten us to believe. Because think about it. The IRS, they don't want to tax the seed. They want to tax the crop. And this is the reason why we have these things called required minimum distributions, right? It's so much easier for them not to tax the little deferral that we're putting into our 401k. It's so much easier and so much more delectable to them to tax that $500,000, that $1 million 401k that we have, right? That looks pretty enticing to them. And so this is the reason why we have to be thinking about this, because at the age of 73, even though we can still do things like Roth conversions, it's not nearly as wonderful. It's not nearly as easy. It's not nearly as palatable to most people because you have to take out the RMD before you can do any Roth conversion. And that's kind of a barrier to entry for a lot of folks. So when it comes to 401ks and 403bs, can we contribute to a Roth? And the answer is absolutely, as long as your plan allows you to do it. And most plans today really do. But here's the thing, just wrap your brain around this for just a moment. If you're an employee and you're 50 to 59 years of age, you can contribute up to $31,000 in a Roth in 1 year. A Roth 401k, a Roth 403b. If you are ages 64 and over, you can contribute $31,000 to a Roth. Well, wait a minute. You just said 50 to 59 and then 64 and over. What happened, Matthew, to 60 to 63? Well, that's what's called a catch-up area. So this catch-up area, the government is allowing us to be able to contribute up to $34,750 to Roth accounts within our 401k, our employer plan, if we are between the ages of 60 and 64. So folks, bone up on the information. Sit down with a fiduciary. Find yourself a financial advisor whose area of expertise is that of income, and figure this out for yourself. Deal with your CPA. Ask lots of questions, because this is your money. You've earned it, and it's going to be yours to live on for the rest of your life. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.